Get ready for a clash of titans. We have the legendary Viswanathan Anand with the white pieces against the rock-solid Michael Adams in a classic Ruy Lopez. This is chess at the highest level. The game kicks off with the most popular opening in chess. We see the Spanish game unfold, with both players developing their pieces to textbook squares, vying for control of the center from the very first moves. Both kings are quickly castled to safety. White's rook slides to e1, putting pressure on the center file, while black kicks the white bishop away, gaining space on the queen side. And here, Anand finds the perfect square, bishop to b3. A subtle but powerful move, the only one to keep a clear advantage. The deep idea is to support a central push. After black plays pawn to d6, white prepares with pawn to c3. Now if bishop to g4, pawn to d3 solidifies the center, preparing the key d4 break. Both sides are fully developed, and black strikes in the center with pawn to d5. A flurry of exchanges follows, and the position cracks wide open. Wow. Anand uncorks a brilliant sacrifice. Knight takes the pawn on e5. Adams has no choice. He's forced to accept the piece, and his knight recaptures on e5. And this is the point. The rook recaptures on e5, cementing white's advantage from the sacrifice. And now white threatens to win even more material. If the knight moves to b6, pawn to d4 breaks open the center. After bishop to d6, bishop to g5 puts a deadly pin on the knight, winning a piece. Black's queen goes on an adventure, probing white's kingside with queen to h4 and then to h3. But Anand is perfectly calm, defending precisely and improving his position. The tension builds in the middle game. Both sides shuffle their pieces, with rooks and queens maneuvering for the best squares, looking for the slightest weakness to exploit. But here, Anand plays pawn to a4, a surprising inaccuracy that lets his advantage slip away. Black suddenly has a real chance to turn the tables. The much stronger try was queen to f3, after bishop to e6, pawn to c4 clamps down, then pawn to f4 challenges black's control, and now the pawn takes the knight on d5, winning a piece. But in the game, Anand pushed the pawn to a4, and the opportunity is there for black. And Adams misses it. He plays rook to b8, a quiet move that gives the advantage right back to white. The critical moment passes. The engine screams for pawn to f4. After knight to e4, bishop to g4 increases the pressure. Following queen to d2, rook to d8 would have given black a fantastic position. Instead, though, the rook slides to b8, and Anand is back in the driver's seat. A quick exchange on the queen side as the a-pawn is traded for the b-pawn. Anand plays knight to e4, another slip that gives black a chance to equalize, and Adams correctly snaps it off. The pawn takes the knight on e4. But Anand finds the only good recapture. Pawn takes pawn on e4, a fantastic move that holds the delicate balance. And here's the critical point. If black attacks with bishop to h3, white's queen swings to d4. And after pawn to b4, the bishop lands on c4, and white is winning a pawn. Black's bishop flies to g4, putting pressure on white's kingside, but Anand's queen calmly steps into the center at d4. Brilliant! Adams launches his own sacrifice, bishop to f3, tearing open the g-file. But Anand is ice cold. He ignores the threat, and his pawn captures the knight on d5 instead. Adams keeps the attack alive with the excellent pawn to c5, the only move to drive the white queen from its powerful post. The position is on a knife's edge. Adams brings his rook into the attack, while Anand defends with incredible precision, bringing his bishop and rook to key defensive squares. And just as the attack reaches its peak, Adams falters with bishop to e4. This lets the pressure off and hands the advantage decisively back to white. The best move was the quiet pawn to h6. Then after bishop to c2, bishop to e4 is much stronger. Now bishop takes c5 and bishop takes bishop on c2 wins material for black. But in the actual game, the bishop moves to e4 and the attack starts to fizzle. Anand seizes his chance, his bishop drops back to d1, black grabs a pawn, and then the bishop reappears on the monster c2 square, eyeing black's weaknesses. And that's the final mistake. Queen to f3 is a terrible blunder, walking right into a winning tactic for white. The game is over. Bishop to e4, bishop takes bishop on e4, rook takes bishop on e4, queen to g5, queen to e6. But after the move played, queen to f3, Anand's response is swift and deadly. The punishment is immediate. Queen takes the pawn on h7 with check. The black king is dragged out into the open, stepping to f7. And Anand follows up with queen to f5 check, forcing the queens off the board on his terms. In a hopeless position, Adams plays king to g8. It's a lost cause, but there was a slightly more stubborn defense. Queen takes queen on f5, bishop takes queen on f5, rook to e5, bishop to h3, pawn to g5. Back in the game, though, the king retreats to g8, and white's win is even more straightforward. The queens are traded, and we enter an endgame where white's 2 bishops give him a completely winning position. Now we see a masterclass in technique from Anand. His powerful bishops slice across the board, restricting black's pieces while his own pieces prepare the final assault. Another brilliant move. Anand sacrifices his bishop on d4, a beautiful shot to simplify into an easily won endgame. Black is forced to exchange rooks, capturing on e1 with check. Anand's precise recapture, rook takes rook on e1, is the only move that keeps the win in hand. The white rook now invades on the a-file. Black's queenside pawns are fatally weak and get snapped up one by one, leaving the position in ruins, and a final stunning sacrifice to cap off the game. Rook to a8, giving up the rook to eliminate black's last active piece. There's nothing to do but accept the gift, and the rook takes the rook on a8. The bishop recaptures on a8, and the dust settles. White is left with 2 bishops against a lone rook in a completely dominant position. With the material advantage secured, Anand activates his king. The 2 bishops work in perfect harmony, weaving a net around black's king and preparing to push the passed pawns. The final moves create an unstoppable threat. After pawn to h3 and bishop to e6, Anand plays pawn to g4 check, and that's all she wrote. An absolute tactical masterpiece from Viswanathan Anand, featuring multiple brilliant sacrifices and flawless calculation. White wins. Michael Adams resigned here, and this is what he saw coming. The king is forced to h6. Then, pawn to f3 cuts off all escape squares. After bishop to e1, pawn to f4 creates an unstoppable passed pawn. Once the pawn recaptures on f4, the position completely collapses.